there is the man who will be in a two-man runoff in the Egyptian presidential elections. That is Ahmed Shafiq, a surprise coming up from behind in this election, and he is now going to be in that two-man runoff, as we said before. Charles Levinson is joining us now with more on this story. We're going to check in with him. And Charles, tell us a little bit about this come from behind process that we've been watching over in Egypt in these elections from this candidate.
Right. Well, Ahmed Shafiq was a real long shot just a few weeks ago, really, through much of the campaign, and he really made a last-minute surge at the end of the campaign and surged into a very narrow second place finish to go into this runoff. And what appears to have happened is that this Ahmed Shafiq, who was really close to the Mr. Mubarak, was a former commander of the Air Force, is a former military man, has a trust of the ruling military, was able to tap into the old ruling party networks that really sort of maintained control over this country for the old regime for decades, and use that to basically propel himself into this runoff.
And tell us about the man he'll be facing in this runoff.
He's running against the Muslim Brotherhood's candidate. His name is Mohammed Morsi. This is an Islamist movement that has sort of been one of the pioneers of political Islam, not just in Egypt but across the region. It's a controversial movement. Obviously, there's a lot of debate about whether it is what it is, whether it's more moderate or whether it's more conservative, whether it will be somewhat tolerant and make room for Christians and women's rights in Egypt, or whether it will really lead Egypt backwards in these respects if it comes to power.
And what are the expected results of this runoff, and put it into context for us what this could mean for the West?
Right. I mean, it's really tough to call the results. At the end of the day, the Muslim Brotherhood took 25% of the Muslim Brotherhood took 25% of the votes, while Shafiq took about 25%. So together they were still under 50%. That leaves half the electorate still to make up their minds. Both sides are extremely polarizing to a lot of Egyptians. On one side you have the old regime, on the other side you have this Islamist movement. So it remains to be seen whether this other half will decide that it's more important to them to have a non-Islamist candidate, even if he's from the old regime, or it's more important to have a candidate that's not from the old regime, even if he's Islamist. And both these sides are really competing for that middle right now. As for what it will mean for America, the Muslim Brotherhood has been really aggressive in reaching out to Washington since the uprising last year, but there's still obviously a lot of skeptics about what an Islamist government will mean for Egypt. Obviously, you can expect it to be somewhat more, confrontative, less friendly with countries like Israel. Shafiq is, I guess, something that Washington and America is more familiar with. He's like Mubarak, seen as coming from the same, cloth as Mubarak. The Egyptian military, from which Shafiq comes, has extremely close ties to the U.S. military.
Right.
So presumably, you can guess that Washington might be a little more comfortable with Shafiq